Welcome, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. And a big welcome to all of you to the Social Media Measurement and Evaluation webinar. My name is Lisa Peterson, and I'm a New Media Education Specialist with the California Pacific Public Health Training Center here at UC Berkeley School of Public Health. And we're also very happy to sponsor this webinar with the Center for Health Leadership. And this event is the second in our latest 21st Century New Media Training Series, and it's also part 2 of our Planning for Social Media Success webinars. And last month we held a webinar on building a social media communications plan, and today it's all about taking the next step with measuring and evaluating. And we have some really awesome returning presenters that are going to help us learn how to do just that. And I'll be your moderator today, and before we dive in, I just want to remind you of a few things. Please be sure to mute your phones, which you can do by pressing *6. And also just a reminder that we will be recording both the webinar's audio and the chat features. So if you don't want to be recorded, please refrain from talking or using the chat feature. So before we get started, I want to introduce a little bit about who we'll be hearing from today. We have J.C. DeVera, who's a Communications Manager at the Green Lining Institute. We have an awesome team from the Young Invincibles, including Ray Roca-Pickett, the Senior National Communications Manager, Rihanna King, the California Communications Coordinator, and Julian Aldana, the Digital Media Coordinator. And I'll also be here in the background, kind of like the Wizard of Oz, doing some moderation. A little bit about our agenda. I'm just going to re-review our session objectives, talk a little bit about some housekeeping, and then we'll launch right into our presentations. And we will have time after I see that there's a comment that my voice is cutting out. Sorry about that, folks. I'm not sure. I'll speak a little bit louder and see if that helps. We will have time after each presentation for questions and answers, and I do recommend that if you do have any comments or questions, to feel free to use the chat box in the left-hand corner, and we will keep an eye on those as we go through the presentation so that we can address them during the Q&A session. A little bit about our objectives. We really want today to be able to present ways for no matter what level you're at, whether you're just beginning or you want to take it up to the next level and step up your game with measurement and evaluation, we want to be able to provide some tips and strategies for how to be effective in doing that, as well as identifying through example which kinds of metrics to measure and what tools are best for that. A little bit about housekeeping. As I said, be sure you have your phone line on mute, which you can do by having it on *6. And again, the chat box is on your left. You can use that for putting in any questions or comments, and we'll keep track of that. If you want to be taken off mute and be able to ask a question verbally, you can click the raise hand button, and we'll be able to do that during the Q&A session. And lastly, we will have links to not only the recording but slides, and also links to any resources you share will be sent out in an email to all participants. And a reminder that we are using the hashtag CalPactNM14 to live tweet the event, which Ray over at the Young Invincibles is really going to help us to do. And I encourage you to get involved and participate in the discussion by using that hashtag. And before we launch into our first presentation with JC, we wanted to do a poll and get a sense with the audience out there, what's your biggest challenge for measurement and evaluation? Is it a matter of don't know where to start, deciding what to measure and how, or is it resources or finding best practices? So I invite you to go ahead and take that poll, and we're going to take a look and see where folks are at. Looks like we have about half really trying to see what it is that you need to measure and how to do it in order to be effective. Followed about resources, always a big challenge. definitely same here for us. Great, and I think that some of these things are definitely going to be addressed in our presentation, so stay tuned. So now I want to introduce our first presenter. Some of you already know him, but for those of you that are just joining us now, J.C. DeVera is a communications manager at the Greenlining Institute, and he's a Bay Area native who grew up in San Jose. Believing that education would help lift his family out of the working class struggle, he overcame the obstacles he faced in a violent, under-resourced high school and made it to his dream college, UCLA, where he graduated magna cum laude in 2011 with a BA in Sociology and Asian American Studies. At UCLA, he developed his passion for community empowerment as a student activist and elected student government official. And JC began his greenlining journey with the Academy as a 2011-2012 Communications Fellow. And today, he's greenlining's new media whiz, managing online communications and strategizing online campaigns to expand greenlining's reach and impact. So I want to welcome JC, and I'm just going to bring him on. And take it away, JC.
Well, thanks for the introduction, Lisa. Good morning, West Coast folks, and to the rest of y'all, good afternoon. Hopefully we have a good amount of people rejoining us from our first webinar. But for those of you that are new, again, my name is J.C. DeVera, and I'm the Communications Manager for the Greenlining Institute. We're a public policy think and do tank based in Berkeley, California. We strive to make the American dream a reality for communities of color by working on a range of issues from health policy to voting rights to leadership development. We believe deeply in the interconnection of issues and believe that partnerships across various sectors are critical to expanding opportunity for all. Today we'll be focusing on measurement and evaluation as it relates to social media, and it's definitely more than just a tweet. So we're going to dive in and see how we can make social media count. I wanted to first start off with Greenlining's relationship to social media. For many years, our organization was using social media without a plan, which is a big red flag. We learned that there needs to be an intentional investment in being good at using these tools. So we created a strategy and made a big push to measure and evaluate our efforts. Through that, we've been able to become more effective each day and continue to learn and grow as we go along. Our experiences and lessons eventually manifested themselves into a social media toolkit that I co-authored, which includes tips and best practices for crafting a social media strategy, particularly for nonprofit organizations, which includes ways to measure and evaluate your progress. Since we have limited time in this presentation, I'll be covering some of the main points from the toolkit, but if you want the fine details, I encourage you all to download the toolkit from our website, which is www.greenlining.org. I believe you all will also be getting a link to it in a follow-up email after the webinar. My only ask is that you please share it with others and let others know about it. So by the end of my presentation, my hope and goal is that we begin the process of answering 3 critical questions. 1, why should I even care about measurement and evaluation? 2, what can be measured and what should be measured? And 3, how do I measure and evaluate? But before we get started, I wanted to make a cultural plug and share some words of wisdom from the father of the Philippine Revolution, Jose Rizal. After studying the history of the Philippines in college, I instantly connected to one of his famous quotes. He or she who does not know how to look back at where he or she came from will never get to his or her destination. Given that the context of this quote relates to the idea of identity, I've come to see how this idea can be applied to almost any aspect of our lives, including social media. So what does that mean? As I mentioned in our first webinar, you always need to remember why you're using social media in the first place. You can't be using it blindly, especially when you're thinking about investing resources into it to achieve your impact. Every post you create, each hour you spend, should be contributing towards achieving your larger goals. Your goals are important, so keep calm and achieve them. And to do that, do what the cool people do. Measure and evaluate the progress towards your goals. Without knowing where you started or are headed, how else will you know whether you've reached your destination or not? And if that wasn't enough to convince you, here are more reasons on why you should care about measurement and evaluation. They allow you to work smarter and not harder. They allow you to understand your strengths and challenges, learn what you should continue doing and what you should change, have real data to allow others, especially top management, to buy into social media, and also celebrate the progress you've made while planning ahead for more. With all that said, now what exactly can be measured? But before we answer that, I just wanted to let you know that I'll be focusing on measurement and evaluation as it relates to Facebook, Twitter, and HootSuite. Tools exist to measure other forms of online media like email and website, and Young Invincibles has a great presentation that's coming up right after this that'll touch on how to use those different analytical tools in greater detail. But for now, we're going to understand how to analyze the big two, Facebook and Twitter. And one way to do that is through that sweet thing we call HootSuite. In our first webinar, I mentioned HootSuite as a tool to help you manage your accounts and your time. HootSuite is essentially a social media dashboard. In addition to helping you manage your multiple social media accounts, including Facebook and Twitter, you also can produce free basic analytics reports that gives you data about your social media performance for a particular time period. The low-cost paid monthly subscriptions will give you even more data. You're also able to shorten links on your social media posts and track the click rates. And best of all, it's great at making your life easier. I know that it's definitely made mine a whole lot better. Here's a snapshot of an analytics report that I generated from HootSuite. You're able to have control on exactly what kind of metrics you want reported. HootSuite has a whole list of metrics that they're able to capture, and there are more advanced ones that require a paid subscription, but even the free basic reports help give you an idea of how you're doing. Here you can see things like your follower growth on Twitter, what sources your Facebook likes are from, and how much daily feedback your individual posts are receiving. There's definitely a whole bunch more that can be measured, so I highly encourage you all to try out HootSuite and see if it works for you. Analytics can often be the most wonky part of using social media. So before I dive in and talk about measurement and evaluation, here's some common jargon that you should know. First one is key performance indicators, or KPIs as they're commonly known. And they're basically what you're actually measuring. So that could come in the form of comments on Facebook or Facebook likes, for example. Metrics are the actual quantitative values, the numbers themselves. So maybe you received 12 Facebook comments. So 12 is the metric in that case. And markers are another word for benchmarks. They're the set goals you've created to help you define the progress that you're working towards. So what can we measure? I've broken down measurements as it relates to two different umbrella goals, engagement and brand recognition. To measure your engagement on Facebook, you can track the amount of likes, shares, and comments you receive on your posts, as well as the amount of tags and wall posts you get from other users on your Facebook page's timeline. For brand recognition, you can track the number of page likes, the reach that your page has had over a period of time, say a month, as well as the number of visits your page receives over the same time period. And to go even deeper, you can start to understand your audience by looking at the demographics. Do you have more male or female fans? What's the largest age bracket? Where are they actually from geographically? Julian will be talking more in depth about how to use Facebook Insights to measure additional items like the days and times your audience is online, and how you can examine the success of individual posts. For Twitter, you can measure your engagement through mentions from other users, favorites of your tweets, how viral certain hashtags you've been using are, and the amount of clicks on links. With brand recognition, you have your Twitter followers, the lists that you're in, as well as retweets both with and without personal messages from other Twitter users. And going deeper, you can look at what exact tweets reap the most clicks or favorites. This gives you an idea of the kind of content that your audience is loving or liking. What lists are you in, and who are in these lists with you? This could be a good time to follow these other users and start the process of building relationships with them. And who are your new followers? Where are your clicks coming from? Most, if not all, of these metrics can be measured and evaluated through HootSuite in a much more efficient manner. So again, just another plug for using HootSuite because it's definitely a very useful tool. So with all that knowledge of what you can measure, how exactly do you measure and evaluate your social media progress? The first step is to align your goals with an objective. If you were with us for our first webinar, one of the things I kept emphasizing was the importance of setting a vision and creating objectives that are smart for social media. You want to match up your objectives with those larger visions. For example, if your goal or vision is to engage your social media audience on your issues, then your SMART objective may be to get at least 50 Facebook comments or 150 mentions on Twitter each month. The question behind that is, how exactly do you do that? Well, that's when you need to define your key performance indicators and your metrics. I like following this train of thought. You start with your goal, move to your objective, define your strategies and tactics, and then list out the KPIs and metric goals that you're working towards. In this example, the goal is to engage the audience, your audience, to talk about issues. The objective is to have regular comments on Facebook and mentions on Twitter. The way that this will be done is to pose questions on Facebook and participate in Twitter chats. A tactic that will be used is to ask questions on current issues, maybe a yes or no question, something simple like, should California increase access to healthcare? You can also listen to what the trending hashtags are on Twitter, so you can insert your voice into different conversations. And for your KPIs, you'll define them as Facebook comments and Twitter mentions. And for your metric goals, you want at least 50 Facebook comments and 150 Twitter mentions. One of the best practices when it comes to measurement and evaluation is to be consistent. You're probably very familiar with this word by now. Depending on capacity and resources, it'd be nice to collect metrics at least monthly. You can schedule time at the beginning of the month to review the prior month's performance to see what worked and what didn't. From there, you can reevaluate, change, or update your strategies and tactics. You'll be able to spot opportunities and see if you need to focus more energy on doing particular things, like sharing more photos, for example. Another thing that helps is to create a master spreadsheet so that you can track your progress and see what areas you've been doing well in or where you can improve. In addition, it helps you to create end-of-the-year reports rooted in data and real numbers. You can link your different metrics to your larger goals of using social media. For us, it's about active community engagement, strong support networks, and a trusting public brand. And as you can see, I matched up a lot of different metrics that I feel relate to those different goals. But remember, it's more than just the numbers. They only tell part of the story. Numbers don't mean much without meaning attached to them, so that's why it's also important to do a qualitative analysis of your metrics. Read into them. For example, dig deep into why a particular post did well compared to others. Was it the language? Was it because you shared a photo versus a link? Take note of this so you can continue building on what's working. And to do that, the thing to do is interpret your numbers in something like a report. Give yourself a reference to come back to for your social media lessons learned. Ask yourself these questions. What were the biggest takeaway from these numbers? What should be the best practices moving forward? What needs more attention? And what strategies should we research and incorporate for the future? Asking these questions will truly help you grow your impact in social media even more. And I believe that just wraps up my presentation. So if there were 3 things that I hope you take away from this presentation, they'd be 1, measurement and evaluation are critical for your social media success. It's how you'll grow. 2, you need to be consistent and put effort into it. And 3, it's more than just the numbers, so read into them. Again, thank you all for joining us today in this webinar and for giving me the opportunity to present. I hope you found the info here useful. And of course, if you want to learn more, you can check out our social media toolkit, which you can find on our website and also in your follow-up emails. And if you want to contact me directly and ask me any questions, you also have my email here. It's johnd@greenlining.org. Again, thanks everyone.
Great job, JC. Some really, really helpful information there. And we have some great time for questions and answers for JC. And I'm also going to unmute the Young Invincibles team as well, so that if they have anything to add, they can join in the conversation. But I do want to remind you that any questions or comments, go ahead and put them in the chat box. And we have some wonderful questions already there that we can start with. It looks like first off we had a question from Erica. She wanted to know if you can get a lot of good analytical information from the regular HootSuite or free version, or do you need to upgrade to make running the analytics worthwhile?
Within HootSuite, the basic free version definitely gives you a good overview of basic things, like your followers, for example. But in order to dig deeper and look at things like the tweets that have been retweeted, then you do have to upgrade to some of the paid subscription services so that you can have access to those different metrics. And I think it all depends on what exactly are you measuring and how much do you want to measure, so that you can dig deeper and really understand what are the different trends that are that your audience is being receptive to.
Great, thanks, JC. And also it looks like Maria was curious about, is it important to get KPIs and metrics from a live tweet session? And if so, how do you do it? So it's good we have our Young Invincibles team on. Maybe we can address that for Maria.
Yeah, so so Maria, your question is really about KPIs and how they relate to your goals, or did I misunderstand the question?
Says, is it important to get KPIs and metrics from a live tweet session? If so, how do you do it?
So I think the way that we do metrics from live tweeting is really to track the hashtag. But maybe Julian can give a little bit more insight. I'm pretty sure we just use the hashtag and then we count up how many retweets and followers and things like that that we gain throughout the process. That's usually how we do it.
Yeah, that's totally right. Absolutely. We usually just use the hashtag to monitor how many people participated in our Twitter chats and how many times things got retweeted and stuff like that.
Great. And Beth has a question. She says one of their goals is, and they're a government agency, so one of their goals is to have a small group review the comments posted, and then if the comments are posted that need to be removed per a policy, a group representative would remove the comment. But they're looking for a tool that would send all comments from Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube to a group email address so that moderating group can review them daily. Does HootSuite do this? Any of you know that?
Well, within HootSuite, you're definitely able to monitor the different posts that you've created, and I believe you can also work it with LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm not sure whether you can include YouTube. I don't think you can, but you're able to monitor the conversations that are happening across all of your different posts there. And from there, you'll be able to mark which ones should be removed and which ones should be kept on. So I think in general, it's very useful because it gives you just one centralized kind of hub where you can monitor all of the different conversations that are happening across your different social media accounts and be able to review comments there and also reply to them if you want.
Great. And I know we mentioned that we will make available links to the slides, but also the great resource, the Art of Listening Toolkit that JC mentioned will be shared with everybody. But in addition to that, JC, Jennifer was wondering if there's a master spreadsheet sample available in the toolkit? similar to the ones that you showed us?
Spreadsheet. I give a snapshot of a spreadsheet in the toolkit, but if you want to kind of talk to me about how we've kind of measured and kept all of our analytics, you can feel free to email me and I can share with you what we kind of do at Greenlining and see if it works for you.
That's great. Thanks, JC. And there's a question from Liz. Can we talk a little bit more about how you link social media metrics with other goals? For instance, Liz shares that they'd like to track what content or types of posts influence people to volunteer with them.
That's a good question. Let's see. Anyone on Young Invincibles want to jump in on this? I'm still mulling over it.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. It's getting in depth a bit about how making that link between social media metrics with other goals. They have a goal to track what type of content or types of posts are influencing people to volunteer with them. So the goal is to increase rates of volunteer. I'm wondering what kind of content, how to track that with social media metrics.
So off the top of my head, I would say since I oversee the entire communications department, I have a list of goals that I have for the entire department, and within those goals include the digital goals. Now, if one of the goals overreaching for the entire organization is to increase volunteerism or number of volunteers, maybe the strategy would be to consistently track however it is you sign volunteers up. So if that's like through folks visiting the volunteer page on your website, or through folks clicking through like a newsletter and you're using the analytics from that newsletter service, whether it's MailChimp or Vocus, or we use Salsa or Nation Builder or something like that. You could track the analytics through that if you segment your list properly, and that kind of gets into nitty-gritty of eBlast. You could also use like a volunteer hashtag. So maybe you send your volunteers out and you want them to be engaged on social media while they're volunteering. So you give them a really specific hashtag like volunteer YI, or YI volunteer is the hashtag, and so you can track the number of times that that's used and when it's used or things like that. That's just something off the top of my head. I think Julian might have some suggestions as well.
Yeah, Ray's absolutely right. Hashtags are a great way to find people that have common interests as you. For example, if you wanted to find certain volunteers, you can try and look up what hashtags are popular in that community and kind of target them that way. Because people who are really interested and really want to help are usually following those trends and hashtags.
And kind of on a related, thank you so much. It's really helpful. Liz also asked, related to this tracking, is what about advertising on Facebook and there in relation to increasing volunteers and promoting information about volunteer opportunities? She says they're hesitant to advertise these types of opportunities for fear that they'll alienate the followers who feel are there for a conversation and not to be sold to. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think when it comes to that issue, it's all about, I think, the way that you frame. And obviously with social media, you don't want to have too much self-promotion. You're there to engage your audience, to drive them into conversation so that you can build that relationship to the point that they become sounding boards for your organization, where they'll be able to spread the volunteer opportunities. Because I think you want to build them at different levels of engagement. You want to interest them first, and then after that you'll take the next steps to see that maybe they'll be willing to share a post after, and then from there you'll start building like an organic engagement model where you're able to get your audience to become your sounding board, so that you don't have to be the sounding board for your own organization anymore.
Great.
This is Julian with YI. Yeah, one thing to know, and I kind of go into this in my presentation, but Facebook is always changing its algorithms. And right now, something that they're doing is they limit your posts to small percentages of your Facebook fans. So, when you post something on your wall, not all of your fans are going to see it unless you do paid promotions. So don't feel, I would say probably don't feel too worried about paying for your promotions, because chances are most of your fans and the people who like your page aren't going to see it unless you do it.
Great. And Pedro had a question about when we're talking about tying in social media metrics with goals. Maybe if both might have goals that are a little bit different, but he's asking about larger behavioral goals trying to be achieved by your respective programs. Maybe, I know you folks are working on larger like policy goals. Maybe if you could speak to that, how not just kind of smaller goals, but larger ones like a respective program or policy.
Sure. So I think what this question is trying to get at is the idea of what I think are like the do metrics or more of the action metrics. So how does your engagement and your usage of social media actually translate into some actionable items, whether that's dollars fundraised or events attended or volunteers recruited, or maybe a petition signed online. So obviously social media is one tool to kind of measure and evaluate that. But you're obviously going to be linking people to different things. I feel like social media sometimes is a gateway to a lot of those different actions. But what you're trying to do on social media is to build the engagement so that they become invested to the point that they'll be able to, once you share that post about recruiting volunteers or doing a big fundraising ask, that they'll be inclined to, click on it, donate, and then even more than that, maybe they'll be able to share that with their own networks so that they can, that you can expand your reach, and then you build an even greater audience and a greater base of folks that know about you and that also trust your organization.
This is Ray again. I would say, going off of goals again, we also have a lot of policy and organizing goals, as well as general organizational goals. And with different regional offices, and policy and organizing being so different from comms sometimes, a lot of our challenges exist in bridging that gap through communications. And so for us, it's really important that we just continue to have monthly goal check-ins with our digital and communications teams as managers. And so if anyone would like to see maybe a copy of our goals that are a little redacted for external use, I'm happy to send you those. Just shoot me over an email. They can be really intimidating, but once you get the hang of it, they're much easier. What I always like to do is make sure that we're making goals that are measurable so that your staff and your managers and your supervisors know going into any meeting about goals or metrics, know exactly if you're hitting them before the meeting, so nothing is a surprise. So if your goal is to increase your followers by 1,500, and you're having a monthly meeting about that, and you know if you're on pace to hit that or not, and if you're not, you're able to go ahead and switch it up early and maybe switch up your strategy and add some more dollars, or maybe more staff time, or maybe you are going to hit that goal and maybe you want to increase that goal. So those are just some of the techniques and the tactics that we use, but obviously it is pretty scary if you're not used to them, and they can be intimidating. We feel like in communications we do a pretty decent job of keeping up with them, so I'm happy to share that with folks who are interested.
Thanks so much, both of you. And Lauren piped in and was just asking, which might come to mind for a lot of folks, what about just creating a poll to gauge interest, or is this too archaic, or is it helpful to do?
This is Julian with Young Invincibles. Oh, sorry, JC.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's not something that we've tried at YI yet, at least not as long as I've been with the organization. Yeah, that's it.
I think on the topic of the poll, I think it's, well, obviously it relates back to your goal. What are you trying to get from the poll itself? And, sometimes polls can work. It's the way that you frame and message it. Like I said, it could be a simple yes or no thing if that's what you're looking for. But sometimes the engagement kind of goes or drizzles off when you're asking really high-end questions like a why question. That takes a lot more time for people to kind of reply, since folks are always on social media and they're kind of breezing through their news feeds. So you want to give them, something simple that they can reply to, and maybe, I don't know. So that it all depends on what your goal is for your poll.
Great. Thanks, JC and YI team. I think we have time for 2 more questions, and then we'll move on. And I'll just let folks know that we are monitoring the questions. If we don't get to yours, we will definitely address them in our next section for Q&A. But Jennifer was asking, how much time would you say you invest in social media evaluation? Pretty helpful question.
At Greenlining for evaluation, so social media is a big part of my job, but I would say that once I got the hang of actually doing all the evaluations and using all of the different analytical tools, it takes me about like an hour to do the monthly evaluation, and also to just do the kind of qualitative analysis of everything, just to analyze what are the trends and give some of the recommendations to my larger team for what we should improve moving forward.
Any comments from you guys over at Young Invincibles?
No, JC did a great job of answering.
Okay, great. So one last question, I think this kind of ties in from Lizak. Can you give an example of a way you've used Facebook or Twitter that your evaluation determined to not be an effective time worth your efforts?
Yeah, this is Julian. One thing that I'm going to circle back to hashtags because I think they're fascinating and you can really learn a lot from them. We've tried using different hashtags to mobilize people and to reach out to people that we think would be interested in our work. And it's always a good idea to piggyback onto an existing hashtag or even build upon an existing hashtag. One thing we've learned is that when you add letters at the end of a popular hashtag, those who search for the shortened hashtag will also see yours. So, for example, like the Get Covered hashtag is really popular right now. If you wanted to be specific and say Get Covered California, people who search just Get Covered will still find it. So instead of creating a new hashtag that's like California Covered or something like that, we have found that it's best to just kind of jump onto something that already exists and build upon it.
Great. Thanks so much, Julian. And excellent presentation, JC. This is really, really helpful and gives a lot of helpful information and helps us move forward in launching connecting to what Julian was just talking about with the hashtags. Just a reminder, we're live tweeting, so be sure if you want to get involved in the discussion to use the hashtag CalPactNM14. And before we move to our next presentation, we want to do a poll. We want to see what your biggest challenge is in actually doing this measurement and evaluation work. Is it a matter of finding out what we just talked about, what is working, what isn't working? Or is it how can you be more strategic or find the best practices and see what folks think out there? Talk a lot about how to be strategic here to have more impact. But also pretty important to leverage that with really knowing what you're doing is having impact and to stop doing what isn't. So great. This is going to be wonderful because we're going to have some great examples from the Young Invincibles team to help us answer that. And this is an awesome team. And in addition to our awesome presentation from JC, We have Ray Roca-Pickett, who's the Senior National Communications Manager. She's been doing the live tweeting as well as offering in our Q&A. She is a little bit about Ray. She was raised in Toledo, Ohio, and at an early age understood the impact that unified voices had to affect real systemic change. After receiving her BA in Communications from Ohio Northern University, she moved to D.C. in the hopes of focusing her time and talents on helping others. And previously, Ray's worked promoting national collections of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. She also founded Loan Reform Now, which is an online network of advocates and educators for those burdened by student debt. And Ray's background in media relations and communications, in addition to her advocacy work, helped fuel her passion for working on behalf of millennials. Now presenting, we're going to have Julian Aldana and Rihanna King. A little bit about Julian. He graduated from the University of Maryland, College Park in 2009, where he studied English and journalism. And shortly thereafter, he worked at Excellencia in Education, where he was a special assistant and liaison to the organization's 65 national partners. And it was here where Julian became interested in social media as a tool to reach constituents and engage with a broader audience. Julian's consulted with small businesses and specifically implementing social media strategies, as well as assisting with web and graphic design. And Rihanna received her BA from Occidental College, where she graduated cum laude with a degree in sociology and also received the W.E.B. Du Bois Spirit of Sociology Award. She's passionate about issues that affect her generation and would like to measure her success in the workforce by being a part of the solution to some of these complex problems. Rihanna's personal experience with the healthcare system makes her particularly invested in the Affordable Care Act and its future. She's also excited for work with Young Invincibles and for the opportunity to make sure that the voices of her generation are heard in the important debates taking place across America. Great team, so I'll hand it off to you all.
All right, so this is Rihanna. Let me know if you can't hear me. So thank you for that great introduction, Lisa. So I'll be presenting first, followed up by Julian, and Ray will be tweeting along, so don't forget to follow her at #CalPactNM14. So I don't know how much you guys know about Young Invincibles, so I'll give a little quick overview. Young Invincibles was created in 2009 around the healthcare debate. Our current executive director and a few of his friends at Georgetown Law saw that young people's voices weren't being represented in the healthcare debate. So they began collecting healthcare stories from millennials and put them up on a website. And that was just really our start. But now in our 5th year, we've expanded to amplify the voices of young people nationally on issues that concern them most. So healthcare, jobs and employment, and higher education are our 3 focus areas. So why do we generate analytics? We have 3 reasons and then an opinion at the end. So our first reason for generating analytics is to increase our effectiveness. Analytics can help you learn what content you present and generate that is most engaging, and then you can continue to produce more of that type of content. Then on the other side, you can learn what kind of content people aren't looking at and maybe think of ways to make it better, or just focus more of your energy and capacity on the things that are working. And then efficiency. If you cut down on the content that no one needs or that no one is looking at, you don't have to spend time or energy on it. Earlier, a lot of you were worried about capacity and resources, so generating analytics can really help you address those issues. You can also use programs like Google Analytics to figure out if people are able to find content on your web page easily, or if that content is more difficult to find. And you can also use analytics to test what days of the week and what times of day are best for reaching your goal audiences. And we also use analytics to increase funding. So as many of you probably know, reporting on progress and having solid metrics is something that funders care about. So using analytics can show growth, whether it be on social media or web traffic, and it's a great way to continue to be funded or attract new funders. It also justifies your cause, your mission, your organization, and the hard work that you're doing. And then in our opinion, generating analytics is super fun. A lot of us on the comms team at YI are data nerds, and while you may not be, it's still kind of fascinating to look at what you're generating, to kind of have that deeper thought about it. We're always trying to find better ways to communicate with our audience and to advance our mission. And using analytics is a fun way to see how your hard work is paying off. So here are some examples of how we generate analytics. We use a ton of different platforms, but today we're going to go over Google Analytics, which we use for our website and our microsites, Salsa, which we use for e-blasts and newsletters, Facebook Insights, which is a free Facebook tool within the site itself, and then A/B testing, which is a lot of people aren't familiar with, so Julian is going to be going much in depth on that later. So websites. At YI we have a few websites. As you can see here at the top of this picture, we have the YI network, which includes a lot of different websites. We also have within each website a ton of subpages, and it's really important to be able to understand what's working and what's not. So basically what I'm trying to say is we have a ton of content, and it's really important for us to understand that in a deeper way. So for that, we use Google Analytics. Google Analytics is totally free and super useful. As you can see here, this is a screenshot of the Google Analytics for our main website. And it can show you things like how many page views you've gotten in a week or in a day or in a month, how much time people are spending on certain pages, where they were coming from and stuff like that. And there's a lot going on in here, and what we use mainly is a behavior tool. The behavior tool helps you first off understand your audience, where they're coming from and who they are. So for example, with Google Analytics, we can find out if people are visiting our website from our Facebook page. So if they're coming from our Facebook page, they have to be our Facebook followers. We can also see if people are finding us through Google or from our Twitter. So that's really helpful to know. It can also help us improve our content. We can figure out what pages or links visitors are looking at and engaging with and what they aren't. And so we pull this kind of data together and put together a monthly report on how our website is doing, which is great for internal and external use. And so now I'm going to pass it on to Julian, who will go into Salsa, Facebook, and A/B testing.
Thanks, Rihanna. Also, thank you to Lisa for putting this together and JC for killing it earlier. I'd also like to thank everyone participating today. If you have any questions, obviously pop them into that chat box, or I'd like to remind everyone that Ray's tweeting with us today. The hashtag is CalPactNM14. Or you can tweet at us directly using @YI_care. So what you're looking at right now is a screenshot of the Young Invincibles eBlast summary on Salsa. Salsa is a management software program that helps nonprofits succeed with tools like fundraising, online fundraising, communications, advocacy, and social media. We use Salsa for our eBlasts and for A/B testing, which I'll go into later after I go over Facebook as well. The slide here shows a summary of the last eBlast we sent out to how many people we sent it to. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that, guys. It shows you the name of the eBlast, when it was sent, how many people it was sent to, how many people opened it out of everyone you sent it to, and it has the percentage there too, which is nice. How many emails were clicked, and also the unsubscribes. So how many people clicked the links we put in our eBlast is arguably the most important number for us here at YI. As an organization that's trying to mobilize young people to take action, how many individuals take action with the things we're sending them is important for us to measure and follow. Next slide. Ooh, sorry, I don't know where I am. There we go. Salsa has its faults, but we're pretty happy with it overall. Salsa helps us understand our audience, what kinds of subject lines warrant more opens or clicks, and what kinds of subject lines don't. For example, if you frame your eBlast to sound like something other than what is in the actual email, you get more unsubscribes because it seems a little devious. I can give you solid examples later if you'd like, but I'm sure you've all received those emails before that kind of like trick you into opening them. On Salsa, you can also segment your email subscribers. For example, at YI, as Rihanna mentioned earlier, we focus on 3 major issue areas: healthcare, jobs, and higher ed. Not everyone who signs up for our email list wants to hear about healthcare, or they don't want to hear about jobs. In fact, when we started our email list, it was to collect and share higher education stories. But since open enrollment, as you can imagine, we email a lot about healthcare deadlines. So it's important to know your audience and make sure you don't bombard them with stuff they don't care about, otherwise they'll unsubscribe. Salsa is also great for A/B testing. If you don't know what A/B testing is, again, I'll go over it after Facebook. So, next slide. There we go. If you have a Facebook page for your organization, I highly recommend it if you don't already. Facebook offers Facebook Insights, which is a free tool to use. It's right under the administration panel, right over, where's the little arrow guy? It's right there. Next slide. They tell you how many page likes you have, what your reach is like, where your people are coming from and how frequently and how often your organization was mentioned. It also tells you how engaging your posts are. Facebook Insights are great to monitor growth. Every age group uses Facebook, including YI's target audience, which are young adults ages 18 through 34. As a national organization, it also helps us understand our audience across a great geographical area. Facebook Insights can break down its data by geography, and you can actually target your posts at specific geographical areas as well. Shares and likes are obviously the main way you can tell if your content is engaging, but Facebook Insights also tells you how many people not only saw your posts, but how many people actually interacted with your post. So how many people actually clicked the image to see it closer, or how many people actually went to the links that you put up. One thing to note is that Facebook is always changing its algorithms. I said something a little something about this earlier. It's important to be in the know and kind of follow what is actually happening with Facebook. Obviously, paying for promotion is an easy way to reach more people, but there are other ways to do it. We recently learned that tagging your partners is really, really important, and it helps to reach more people. So, what is A/B testing? A/B testing is when you produce two versions of the same thing and test them on two different audiences to see which is more favorable. For example, we do this with our email list. We produce two different subject lines with the same text in the body of the email and send it to two small groups from our email list. Sometimes we change the day of the week or the time of day to see if that changes the open rate or even the unsubscribe rate. So, going to the next slide. Here's an example from our email list in Salsa. We sent an e-blast to our full list for the launch of Higher Ed Not Debt, but first tested it on two small groups with two different subject lines. So you can see right here, Higher Ed Not Debt Test A was called Got Student Loan Debt, Check This Out. And the B test was You're the First to Know. And you can see by the number that it was to a small percentage of our list, our total list. And you can see how many people, that a lot more people opened the test B, which is You're the First to Know. However, there are a lot more people who unsubscribe. So you kind of have to pick or choose your battles. Is it more important that people open it, or is it more important that people stay on your list? So we ended up going with You're the First to Know and sent it to a majority of people on our list, which you can see right there. You can also A/B test on Facebook, but in a different way, which is something cool I recently learned. So you want to test two different graphics or two different flyers or two different anything you can post on Facebook. Facebook has a feature where you can target at different audiences by gender, relationship status, age, location, etc. One thing we've tried is running A/B testing using geographical areas which are roughly similar. So say Arizona and Washington State, which have roughly the same population. They're also very different political climates, so you have to take that into account, but that's one way you can A/B test with some of your content. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but that was kind of a brief overview of some of the ways Young Invincibles uses analytics to learn from, improve, and build our social media. If you have follow-up questions, you're more than welcome to email me directly, or you can tweet at Ray or at YI_care. And follow us on our social media. Pass it off back to you, Lisa. Thank you.
Great job, Julian, Rihanna, and Ray. Excellent. I am just going to unmute folks here. And we have some great time for some Q&A here. And just want to remind everybody, if you have any questions or comments, or we didn't mention it earlier, but if you have a best practice or strategy or tool that you're locked into and using and it's really working, you want to share it with folks, please be sure to put it in the chat box. And what we'll do is we'll put together a resource document to share those tips and tools and resources with everyone, with our other resources after the event is over, when we mail out the links to the recording and the slides and the toolkit. So be sure to put that if you know of any and want to share with everybody. And let's see, I just want to make sure I have everybody muted. We had some great questions here. Let's see, first is from Allison asking about, they have a Facebook account for their organization, but it's difficult to understand how Facebook generates the number that they show for saw your post. Can you shed some light on that?
This is Julian. I actually don't know the actual percentage, but it's a way for Facebook to get more people to do paid promotions. So it may, I'm sorry I can't give you an answer, a solid answer, but I'm pretty sure the percentage just changes. If you tag partners, say there's a great organization called Out to Enroll who focus on healthcare in the LGBT community. We produced a fact sheet or an infographic on the LGBT community and how they're affected by the Affordable Care Act. And we tagged Out to Enroll in that post, and it got shared with all, a percentage of Out to Enroll's people as well, followers, and a percentage of ours. So that I can't give you a solid number, but that is one way to increase the amount of people who follow your posts. I don't know if JC knows the answer to that question.
Yeah, I don't have anything on that question, so I'm not too much of a help there. Sorry.
Well, Julian, that was really helpful. I think Robin also had a question. Would A/B testing increase the percent of followers that actually see your Facebook posts? And her question is in reference to the fact that I think there was a mention that only a percentage of your followers see any one post. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. A/B testing, in theory, is to see what content is most engaging and what your followers or what the people on your list find most engaging. And so potentially, yeah, the idea is to find what is most engaging and then pick the one that's most engaging and promote it to your entire following or followers on your social media.
Great. And Kathleen had a good question about any tips for reaching out to young and low income with limited access to computers or smartphones, etc.
So this is Ray. I actually have a good stat for that. So we, and I think you can find the stat on Pew. Pew Research does a lot of good research about this specific topic. But young and low-income folks actually use smartphones the majority of the time to access the Internet. So really, if you're trying to reach young folks who are more traditionally low-income, using mobile-friendly websites and Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr and those sorts of things are actually a great way to reach folks. Because they're already using that more than other populations of folks. But yeah, check out Pew. There should be a study on it because we had this same question in the last webinar. So I would just try to check out some research. But yeah, so just because folks are low income or young doesn't necessarily mean that they're not accessing the Internet. They're actually using it, and they're using their phone to do it. So.
Thanks so much, Ray. And we'll find a link to that Pew research report and share it with folks. And linking to this concept of actually reaching folks and being effective, Beth had a question about how much does the time of day or the day of week when you send associated with the percentage of opens, whether it's Salsa that you're using or Constant Contact.
So is the question if like 3 o'clock or noon are better times to send things?
I think that comes up knowing, I know it's, especially with Julian's great presentation of A/B testing, it's always really how to answer that to get to who your audience is and where are they and when they would be most receptive. But I guess generally, if you think there's a time of day or a day of week that's best to generate higher percentage of opens or clicks.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what kind of organization you have. We're a national organization, but we do have a big presence in California. So, if we want to reach our whole list, we have to find a time that, works for both of the East Coast and the West Coast, and of course everyone in between. So we're still testing that out. We generally do our e-blasts in the afternoon around 3 when the West Coast is at lunch or, right before they go to lunch. And when, things are still moving along here on the East Coast, we generally stay away from early morning East Coast hours and in the evening. So.
Yeah, definitely just to hop on that. To find out the time that really works best for your list or for your audience, you just have to do a couple and then really see what the open rates are looking like. It might be particular days, like the middle of the week that might work better because there are folks that take the end of the week off or don't come in on Mondays. So there's definitely a whole range of factors to consider when you're thinking about, what's the best time and what's the best day to send out emails. And a lot of it is going to be very reliant on your analytics and to really look and understand, what are the general trends that your audience is going in terms of like their open rates and their click rates.
Thanks, Julian and JC. And related to that, about really kind of honing in and doing some testing, Danielle had a question about, related to the A/B testing, how do you determine how many people will be selected to go into each group? And then how do you determine who goes into Group A and Group B? Do you do a type of randomization? What do you folks do?
It's completely random. We do a certain percentage. I think we do 5% of our list. Actually, it's smaller than that. It's like 3% of our list for the A test and 3% for the B test. And yeah, it's completely random. And that's kind of the point. It's kind of like a science experiment where you don't, a random sample is the best way to do it, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it, depending on what email service you use, they should have the capabilities for you to create those randomized lists. Because I know that Young Invincibles uses Salsa. At Greenlining we use vertical response. And I know that the other big email services like Constant Contact also provide those randomized services so that you can do A/B testing.
Great, thank you. And Danielle had a question about getting more information on Salsa. We'll definitely share a link to that so folks can get more information. And we did have a question earlier from our live tweet. We'll get back to here. Let's see here if we can find it. Didn't want to miss any question here. It was from Callie PTC. Was a question about Twitter. They've seen increased engagement metrics correlate with a number of tweets, but are having difficulty keeping up with measuring. Any tips or suggestions with that?
Can you ask the question again? Sorry.
Sure. They were asking about, they've seen increased engagement metrics correlate with the number of tweets, but are having difficulty keeping up with the measuring part of it. So any tips on how to merit balance, seeing the increase, but how do you keep up with the measuring?
Good question. So to that point, I mean, generally, the more that you tweet, the more likely it is that you'll have more engagement because you're probably going to be sharing lots of different content that folks can interact with and engage with. I think at the end of the day, it's going to relate to what exactly are you measuring, whether that's your mentions, because all of that can be easily tracked, in terms of where were you last month compared to this month in terms of how many mentions you had. And you can also track how many tweets did you send out for that particular month, because so you can kind of see like the correlation. Like I tweeted less last month, yet I got less engagement, or I tweeted more this month and I got more engagement. Or maybe it's the other way around where like a particular topic that you were talking about increased engagement by a lot even though you didn't send out a lot of tweets. So I think in a way you just have to really look at the data and look at all of those different metrics and how they kind of relate and interplay.
Great. Thanks so much, JC. And also we had some questions about, we are focusing on Facebook and Twitter here, but we did have some questions about tools like Instagram and Tumblr. One question is, do you folks use Instagram? And then another, Maria asked if you know of any or can recommend some tools for measuring efforts on Instagram and Tumblr, for instance.
Hi, this is Julian with Young Invincibles. We do use Instagram. I personally love Instagram. People we've tried using it in different ways. We want to show our constituents a different side of YI that we don't show on our main social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter. When we've posted the same kind of content, it's not people don't engage with it as much as we post images of us kind of behind the scenes. For example, I don't know if you guys all remember, but maybe a couple of months ago, Gmail crashed and it wasn't working. And we took a picture of ourselves. We went in on a cookie break and we took a picture of us eating cookies, and it's probably our most liked picture on Instagram. And I think people really appreciate and like seeing the faces behind your organization, and just finding, I don't think that every organization has to follow that model, but maybe finding a way to use other platforms like Tumblr and Instagram to show your organization in a different way that might reach out to other people. And as far as metrics are concerned for Instagram, there is a free program called Statogram, which I'll spell out on the chat box. But yeah, it's a little, you can't really block off the dates that you want to search analytics for, so it's not perfect. For example, you couldn't search for February 2013. You have to kind of be a little more general. But it does offer some pretty cool tools, so I would recommend it for just to kind of check it out and dig around and see what you can find.
Thanks, Julian. And there was a question from Lauren. Let's see, does MailChimp is something similar to Salsa? Does what we're talking about work similarly with MailChimp?
This is Ray.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, I think they all do the same thing. They're all just an email service.
Okay, great. We did have some questions that came through in our pre-survey, which I thought would be nice to have the time to address. But any recommendation on, JC brought up a great point about using both quantitative and qualitative ways of expressing numbers. And we had a question in the pre-survey about how best to communicate the numbers to staff or upper management or in progress reports to grantors. Any recommendations here?
JC.
Oh.
Sorry.
Sorry. So at Greenlining, what I do is I compile the report. So I also import all of the different analytics reports I gather from HootSuite, as well as downloading our Facebook Insights for that particular month and just kind of condensing the data to make it more relatable to staff. and just to kind of see where are we really doing well, and what are the things that we need to focus on, and where they can kind of come into play in terms of supporting those efforts. I think that I found that particularly useful because that's allowed me to get a lot of sign-off from top management on a lot of different things, whether that's making sure that I have more time to create graphics, or whether we're able to hire a graphic designer for particular things so that we can have more engaging content to share with folks. And pretty much by looking at those numbers and really seeing where we are and understanding our growth for that particular period, they're able to buy in and invest in those different strategies.
Thanks, JC. And we also had a question about where all do you look for information on upcoming trends? What to kind of be ready for, prepared for, or at least know about in terms of social media, whether it's related to the plan or it's related to measurement or evaluation, new tools, how folks are actually, like Ray mentioned, new reports showing young and low income on smartphones, anything that you folks look to?
Go ahead.
I would say, you would find it the same way you would find out what is going on in the news if you're used to doing traditional media. You're reading blogs, you're reading trusted news sources. So I would say you're on Twitter, you're monitoring the trending hashtags, you're monitoring the trending hashtags in your region. You are, usually the things that are going on social media are the things that are going on in the rest of the world. So if you're talking about, things that are going on in Ukraine or Venezuela, like those things are going to be trending at the same time on social media as they would be on the front page of the New York Times. So I would just say keeping up with pop culture and keeping up with your, the whatever respected news sites that you read and take note of.
And to add on to that, I also compiled a list of popular social media blogs in the social media toolkit that you can click on. Has a lot of the big influencers from folks that do social media for social good to more specific ones that do social media specifically for nonprofit organizations. And a lot of them have different email lists that you can sign up for, and they give you really cool weekly newsletters with the latest, tools or the latest resources and kind of like the latest news and facts and figures related to social media so that you can keep on top of all of the trends.
Thank you, JC, and thanks so much to Ray, Julian, and Rihanna. That was great, really, really helpful. And we don't have any other questions right now, so I think we'll just move forward. And I want to say that this has just been some really great information, and our speakers all off their emails here. If you have some other questions or you want to know some sources for some more information on something that was brought up, be sure to reach out to them. And I just want to say from us here, we are so thankful for the great job you've done, and I'm hopeful that my own efforts are just going to improve. This has been really amazing to all of you. And tying into that, to thinking about what can we do to improve what we're doing and actually implement some of these things that we've learned here. We're very interested in learning from you how you think that you might be able to implement. Take one small step, one tip, one strategy, do something differently, something new. And if you're interested in letting us know, we'd love to find out and then maybe check back with you to see how it's going sometime down in the future. And after the event is over, you'll see a page generated for a post survey. We really appreciate you filling out, taking a few moments to fill that out, and just let us know how it went and what we can do better so that we can do a good job, a better job, and improve what we're doing to help give you the knowledge and the information and tips and strategies from great folks like these to help you go back to your organizations, go back to your departments, and put into practice what we're talking about here so you can have some impact in what you're doing. And just a big thank you to everybody for joining us today for the wonderful conversation that we've been able to have. And if you have any questions, shoot an email to us here. We'll definitely get back to you. I invite you to check out the other events that are coming up in the series. We do have, very timely, we're going to be talking about Google Analytics in our April 16th webinar. So we can draw on the already great information that we've got from our presenters today, go a little bit deeper into analytics with Google Analytics. So please check that out. And that's all that we have for today. Thanks so much, everybody. Great job. And get out there and do the good work. Continue doing the good work.